Well, good day, folks. I don't have my mug with me, so I'm going to have to. Oh, Dave's got the dark mug, and I'll have my fist. I'm Sean.
I'm Dave. Welcome
This
to
is Barstools and Bandtalk.
There you go. So we have a super special guest today. Give us a little heads up, Shawnee.
Well, this is a great one, and this man, he's no introduction. I were playing the bars back in the day. He was instrumental in both schooling us how to not be assholes, but how to just what it takes to actually get your shit together when you're trying to play. And he went on to a fabulous career, and he's going to talk about that. So without further ado, Dave, please introduce our guest.
So you'll remember him mainly as the house sound tech for the Crazy Horse Cabaret. But he did so many other things, was on the road with so many different bands, met so many cool people, a personal friend of Jeff Healy's. And as Sean mentioned, he had a great career with ATV and CTV as well. Please welcome to Barstools and Bandtalk, Brian Norm. There he is.
Hey.
Welcome, brother.
How you doing there, handsome?
It's dandy. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So, you guys chatted beforehand. So you had a milestone last week after a long time in you're hanging it up, so to speak. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, I got this really cool phone call about 26.5 years ago from our old friend Alfred Larder when I was at Georgetech at the time, and I got this phone call that the CTV had need of a guy that could mix bands, that they could train to do news. Breakfast television had just started probably a year or so before, and Grant Kennedy was doing most of the bands and stuff. They had Dave Eisner was their second audio that he graduated from Berkeley in Boston, and they needed a third guy to do bands and do news. I got a call. It was awesome. Yeah, 26.5 years ago.
So is it now? Is it just time, or was it timing, or was it everything that's going on, or had you planned that you circled the data on the calendar? This is when it's going to be. Like I'm officially.
No, it had more to do with the fact that I have cracked the 65. So I've been working for 50 years. There are changes going on at the station, and we aren't doing quite as many bands as we used to. I'm old. It was time. It was time for me. So I took advantage of the timing and put my hand up to move on, and then they accepted. So yeah.
Fantastic.
Let's talk a little bit about Brian Norman now, because a lot of folks don't know this, but Brian is actually a musician himself. But you're from Newfoundland originally, correct?
Yep.
So when did you come here?
Yep, Corner Brook. Well, I was just to step back a little bit before I met my band. I had a part-time job at the Arts and Culture Center in Corner Brook as a lighting guy, and sometimes audio, just kind of all the stage stuff, and all that sort of thing. So that was a little bit of an introduction to theater and that sort of thing. I had friends that were working there, and they asked if I wanted to come and do some stuff. So I did. Fast forward another couple of years. I mean, that was okay for a couple of years, and things slowed down there. I had other jobs, and then we had in town. There's lots of bars and stuff. You guys remember? You probably don't. Club 17. Yeah. Anyway,
I've
Yeah,
It was Tall Boys.
I mean,
we were there.
so well, kind of. Soma was coming there. That's I was just a teenager and stuff, just going out with the crowd and going to the bar and stuff. But you get forward and all these bands that were showing up. A lot of these guys eventually became friends, and it just blows my mind how that all connected. Anyway, there was a duo playing down at the Holiday Inn called Yazoo. It was Ann Prim and Marlon McDonald, and so they were doing their thing in the lounge, and a lot of the guys were all going down there because they were really, really good. Ann Prim was just a freaking monster guitar player. All of Bonnie Raitt, lots of slide, really great blues riffs and just really interesting originals. Marlo was playing congas and a lot of percussion and stuff. A lot of fun. Anyway, we all got became there was a large group of us. We all became friends with the band and got talking. And turned out that they had a band back in Halifax that they needed. They were going to be going on the road and doing a bunch of shows and stuff. I really didn't have a whole whack of ties. I mean, just a kid in Corner Brook looking for somewhere else to try something new. So I left Corner Brook with the band. I came back to Halifax to be their roadie. And when we got back to town, turned out that their bass player was no longer with them, so they needed a bass player. And so they said, I could play. I played a bit of piano and a bit of guitar and stuff, but jam with the band at the Holiday Inn on guitar. And then when we got to Halifax, they said, yeah, we kind of need a bass player here. They handed me a guitar, and I had to learn to play bass. And it was a blast. I mean, Yazoo was way ahead of its time with all kinds of really great originals and really different, punky kind of stuff. And of course, right behind our apartment on Barrington Street, which is right next door to where Barely's is right now.
Okay.
1268 Barrington. We had the apartment upstairs. I was living up there with them. And Ginger's was right behind us. So that place had everything going. So lots of going over there and jamming with people over there, and watching Buddy and the Boys played there. 1755 played there. Who else? My goodness. Yeah. Anyway, so it was an amazing time. Lots of Kevin Roach lived upstairs. David Potter lived upstairs. These are all flat picker guys. And Dave McIsaac was up there. Paul Smeets was in and out a lot from Last Chance Band and the Heartbeats. So lots of jamming going on. There's lots of after hours stuff in the apartments upstairs. And
what year was this now, Brian?
So much.
What year is this?
Ginger's Tavern.
Well, what year?
It was 1976. Oh my God.
When you because I honestly, God, Brian, I get schooled every time. I had no idea that you played as much as you did, because I always knew you as I first met you at the Horse. But how long did you play before you decided that you were going to go on the other side to get paid opposed to not getting paid?
Yeah. Yeah, I used to be a bass player. Yeah. About 5 or 6 years. I was in Yazoo. I played with a thing called Jada, which was a jazz oriented thing with Kate Vaughn. Alex Vaughn's from the Aviators and all that, and Kenny McKay. I played with that for a while. I was with George Brothers and Old Blue for a while. George Brothers was the bass player in that band, and George was making the transition to guitar, and they needed a bass player, so that was uh, uh, that was a that was a that was an interesting transition with Patrick and JP Ellis in that band. They were freaking monsters, and but just like the new guy, trying to keep up. I tried to learn to read. That's a funny story. When I was in high school, they did aptitude tests and stuff, and the music teacher from the school came to me like in the hallway and said, we've been looking at your stuff, and you really need to learn to play piano. You should learn to play piano because you can do this. And of course, being at the time, I was thinking, nah, piano's for pansies. I'm not going to do that. I'm kicking myself in the ass for not doing it.
Me too.
But I could play by ear, and I knew lots of songs because I was listening to lots of stuff, so I picked up a lot of stuff fairly readily, I guess. But I wasn't the best. I wasn't the best bass player around. I could keep up, but
But it kept you working.
kept
you
me
working, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So how did you want as a technician? I've always wondered that because when we used to play the horse, and again that was the first time I met you. You had this. They get this thing now. It's called ADD, which I found out I've had my whole life. But I always remember, Brian, my monitor, and you'd be like, "Let me finish my stuff. I will come and talk to you in a minute." And it was just like, and you weren't like an ass or anything. It was just like the Brian Norman. This is the way it's going to be. We'll get back to you. When did you decide you were going to be a tech?
I kind of trying to feed myself, I had that history of lighting stuff with the Arts and Culture Center. So there was a few bands that I joined that I was doing lights for, and there was another, they had a sound guy, and I'd be watching him and doing the lighting thing, and just being a lighting tech, if you want. And that was in the way early days of the late '70s, early '80s, and just doing lots of things to just try and feed myself.
Right.
Times were pretty tight then. There was a gajillion bands around to do stuff with, but it also made it hard to get good gigs and good pay and all that stuff. So yeah, I was doing lights. As a matter of fact, I was a lighting guy with like first going out with a real band. I ended up doing lights for Sam. For Sam Moon and Scrapper. Scrapper was doing the thing, right? What a freaking great guy he was, and mentor, and that was Sam with Ram back then. Pat Riley, Donnie Chapman, George Antoniak, Steve Naylor. Oh, scary good band, boy. Yeah.
They were all right.
That was a monster. Anyway, Scrapper moved on, and I slid over to mixing it, and then it became Sam Moon with Sun Machine, with Helen and Brett and Kevin, Neil McKinnon.
Oh yeah.
And the Alaska run.
How long were you with Sam for?
Probably a couple of years. Floyd Caldwell came and was doing lights. I was mixing it, and we were all over the place. Did tons of stuff. And,
where'd you go? Like, where would you travel back then? This is your early '80s now, or?
Yeah.
So like, what was?
Yeah. So it would. I hooked up with Sam probably about 80 or thereabouts, 81 maybe. And we were all over the Maritimes, the circuit, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, PEI, around here, and it was amazing, just an amazing time. And of course, Sam had a history of going to Alaska for to do shows up there in a little bar called the Beachcomber. So I went on that trip and pooched it. I met somebody up there and decided to stay, which was like, oh my God. And I will say publicly that I've apologized to just about everybody in Sam's band, in the Sun Machine Sam Moon band, that I pooched that one pretty bad staying there. I kind of overstayed that one, and I regret not coming home with everybody else.
Friggin' women. Okay, so you're up in Alaska, and you decide this probably isn't for you. You make your way back home, I guess. So, what, we're in the mid '80s now, or where are we at?
Yeah, we're about we're into 80, 81. I got a red eye out of Kodiak down to Seattle to Chicago to Boston, and then made my way up to back home. And then when I got back from all of that, I got notes.
Good.
Yeah, I tried to keep it all together, and then I started catching up with. But there was a band out of Amherst called Blitz that was looking for a guy. Gary Stanhope was managing. Gary Nellen. They were looking after that, and they were looking for a sound guy. So I hooked up with them. That was Willie Dobson, Andrew Douglas, Mark Radden, and Gary Snook, and Steve Osmond, and a really wicked crew guy by the name of Brian Gould. We called him Kiwi, and he was just a madman. Just a madman. So much fun. God rest his soul. He's since passed away, but my goodness, what a fella! Yeah, what a band. And they were a lot of fun to tour with. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, Brian. I mean, I guess the common thread so far is that you must have been developing a name for yourself, a reputation as being a good sound tech, having a good ear. You know?
Well, I don't know so much about that. I think it was, it was about the ebb and flow of bands, and like if the band survives or if they have issues or whatever. Anyway, so there's a lot of moving around going on. And I was just trying to stay employed and have a bit of money, be able to have my own, have a life, and have a place and all that. So, right. Like anybody, right?
The big I remember about you, Brian, and you might go, yeah, right. But I just remember how patient you were when you were mixing. How, like, I've seen guys, and I won't name names, but we all know them, where something's not going right and they're freaking out, kicking stuff over. And I just remember you were always very patient, and you would work and especially with younger guys like us, where we had no freaking clue what we were doing, and you just kind of you were super patient, and I found it helpful.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, Sean. Everything that I picked up along the way and learning. I mean, from Scrapper, even Bob Schindel, for heaven's sakes, and Al Robb. I'm doing shows and stuff, doing double gigs. I mean, Schindel was Tom Cochran's guy, and Al Robb was always out there. There was a Last Tiger, I think. Having questions and asking them and getting a decent answer was it always impressed me that I would get that from those guys. And I'm not going to that was really nice, and I always remembered that. And so sharing stuff was never really an issue, because we're all learning all the time. I mean, you might have asked a question that that I had to really think about to answer correctly, and you know, it either confirmed what I was doing was correct, or you questioned me on it, and I'd have to rethink it a little bit. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, I've always been a horrible sound check guy. I just don't have the patience. And you know, you're playing these small rooms where people are eating lunch and they want you to, you know, kick, snare, and it's just, I've always felt weird about that.
Yeah.
But like, you know, again, and it always would center around, like, you know, maybe there's an overtone on the tom or feedback here or there. And again, I've worked with guys where you can't even be around them. And I just remember you were just always, yeah, and like, just no panic, no flip out. And it was like I say, it was good. And you know, that's just something I always remember about you.
Oh, thanks, man.
Let's go back. So we're talking about Blitz. You're on tour with them. We're in the 80s now. So this must have been around the same time that Peter Henderson starts Tour Attack, probably, in around this time.
Somewhere around that, yeah.
So were you with other bands, or did you work through Peter, or how did you carry on your career?
Well, after moving through several, I went back. There was a time in Newfoundland with Blitz where you know, things changed. I ended up moving back into St. John's, and staying at my brother's place out there, and I hooked up with a fellow by the name of Al Strickland.
Yeah.
Huggy, and a little band called The Business that had Glenn Simmons and Ian Perry from the wonderful Grand Band, which had just recently folded, and I think Kevin McDonald was on drums, and Wayne Hunt was keyboard player, and yeah, that was a really cool band, and we toured around Newfoundland all over the place, and I was the lighting guy and Huggy's mixing, and learned tons from that boy. He's still got the magic ears, and I love him to pieces. He's another one that was always really good to share stuff with, and share stuff with you. So we toured all over Newfoundland. Eventually came to Halifax. You know, the band was trying to move forward with their stuff. And after a couple of years, there was a year and a half, 2 years maybe, down here, and Al was kind of spreading his wings and doing some other stuff. So I ended up mixing Business for a little while, which was some big shoes to fill. From Huggy with that band with those butterfly pins and stuff. He just paced you to the back wall with that kick drum. It was just like, oh my god, how do I do that? I want to do that. That's just killer. And yeah, it's always learning this stuff, and you know, and then having the opportunity to mix it was a lot of fun too. Yeah.
So you actually raise a good point there, because a lot of folks, and I kind of talked about this now, you probably saw Roy Mummercat's interview, and Roy just, like, we learned so much from Roy the other day when we were talking to him. But it's the same thing with you and some of the other techs that, you know, and we'll get into names later on. But the gear that we were using back then was archaic when you think about it. Now, and I'm talking, you're probably in the mid 80s or your early 80s here right now. What were you taking on the road with you for gear? Like, and trying to explain, like, if I didn't know anything about music, what would you bring on the road and why?
Well, some of the PAs that we used were you know, Matt Martin modular stuff, you know, lows and mid cabinets. There's a lot of Butterfly gear out there, the lows and mids, and you know, Yamaha horns and you know, with JBLs loaded in them and stuff. And it was all modular systems, and you know, I was trying to tune them up, and then later on, once I got into Tour Attack and stuff, we were using things like that, and then the old Martin RS 1200s. I don't know if you remember them. They were just a pig of a box with everything was in one box, and we probably had 2 or 4 of them aside, and so it was just a big wall of sound.
So you take one butterfly cabinet, it was constructed out of wood. I don't know what kind of wood it was, but I mean, it was so friggin' heavy, and it had to be that construction, I guess, to push
Baltic
the sound
birch
out.
usually. It was
Birch?
usually Baltic birch was because it's super dense, and it is heavy, but it doesn't let, like especially on the lows and the mids and stuff, it doesn't let it leap out through the sides of the cabinet. It focuses especially with the butterflies with the folded horn kind of configuration in there. It would push it forward instead of up and out.
Did they ever push? Lord dying Jesus. My God. Okay, so now we're into you're a respected tech. You've worked with Al Strickland. You've worked with Scrapper. You have, like you know what you're doing now. Are you getting like your own gigs, or you're freelancing, or like where are you at now?
Gee. Yeah, I'm kind of in a little void in the mid '80s. I mean, there was I was out with the customers for a good while. Jamie Miles, John Chasson, Dennis. Dennis. Oh my gosh. Dennis Grant, John Chasson, Les Brown, Steve Zatt, Sharon Resky, Francine Shea, it kind of morphed with several people. Sharon was in there first, and then Francine joined, and then Steve Zatt came in, and things moved around. But I was out with those guys for a good while, and we did lots of maritime stuff. Same circuit on the bars.
And they'd be full weeks too, eh, Brian? They'd be a full week. They'd be a full week, like 6 or 7 nights you'd be playing, right?
Most of them were like 4 or 5.
Okay.
4 or 5. You have a couple of days to kind of recoup or travel.
Right.
Yeah, but there were some that were week long, that were back to back. And, you packing up from one place and climbing aboard the truck, the bus, the van, whatever, and go to the next one.
So I don't want to get technology here too much, but at what point in all this sort of thing did that house gig come up where you landed there?
I was doing freelance stuff with Tortec, and so we're doing Concert on the Hill. We were doing corporate stuff. We were doing. I wasn't a full-time employee, but I was doing sort of in between bands. But this was kind of like the same thing, and I was mixing lots of stuff, and either mixing it or doing monitors or just teching it, so there was lots of band stuff that way, and then I got wind of the Crazy Horse thing, and so I called up, put an application in there that they were looking for a house tech, and 3 years of absolute astonishment with the bands that came through that place. It was yeah.
Well, I mean, and you really had to be a head chef and chief bottle washer there, because sometimes you would mix, sometimes you wouldn't. I'll put you on the spot. Do you remember what the house gear was there?
It was a Fane front loaded system. There were two Fane cabinets up hung from the ceiling. We had a monitor rig, which was a little. Anyway, the little 14 channel or whatever, monitor board and some JBL monitors, wedges, and we had a few mic stands, cables, and stuff like that. So we could do stuff in house, just on our own. We had to bring in a desk, but we had the fundamentals. If somebody else was bringing in gear, they didn't have to bring a whole lot. They just needed their mixer. We had a lighting desk there. We had fixtures in the ceiling, enough to do your basic show. There's like maybe 10 bars of 4 that you could reconfigure all over the place, and our own dimmer bay and stuff. So it had a good bit of gear to be able to do stuff.
So tell me how loud, like how many watts did that system put out at the Crazy Horse?
God, I couldn't. I don't know.
I was going to make the comment.
6,000, maybe 10,000. I don't recall now. All the amps were. I think they were Brysons.
Mm-hmm.
Might have been QSC. I can't remember.
Brian, I was going to comment too that you mentioned you had a lot of lights, just never enough for Razor Boy apparently, because they always brought.
No, but they added hours to theirs.
Yes.
Yeah, because they never had enough.
We're getting down to the wire, guys, for time. I just want to do a couple quick things. First of all, again, you had a long, steady career as an audio technician, as a professional audio technician for the Maritime Music Circuit. Then from there, you went to CTV. You had a 26-year career there. So you're a well-respected audio technician, Brian, and a very good player, too. I've heard you play before. But now, I see in the background, you're doing some other things now that you're all retired now. Looks like you're doing some painting.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's a new hobby of about a year that I was kind of reintroduced to doing some stuff, and with my family, we had a paint night one night, and we knocked off a few things. Like, okay, see what we can do in an hour. And we all painted the same thing and came up with different versions of it. And anyway, it got to be kind of fun, and so spare time, holidays or whatever, I get into doing some stuff. And
that's awesome. That's very. I can't see the numbers at all.
How many times have I heard that?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's cool.
This is one from dumping day. I added the fireworks.
What's your plan? Are you just gonna are they gonna be gifts for people? Are you gonna hang them in your house? What's your plan for them? Nice.
Oh, wow.
Nook show down at Peggy's.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to do anything with that, Brian?
No, I just do it because it's fun.
Nice.
He just does it so that he doesn't get the honey-do list from Sandy. He's like, no, honey, I'm busy. I'm busy.
Yeah.
This is all in with. Let me tell you. Yeah.
All right. So really quickly, highlight of your career.
Highlight of my career. Road tech with Rita McNeil. I was a PA tech for that with Huggy and Dave Hillier. And mixing wise, had to be BB King. I mixed BB for 2 nights at the Horse. I got his permission to record the show, and with the promise that I would never release it. And nice. I haven't, but I still have it.
Nice.
And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And very good friends with Jeff Healy, too, I might add.
We had a lot of fun with Jeff Healy when he was he came into the Horse, and Jeff was new. We had Tragically Hip when they were new at the Horse, Blue Rodeo when they were new, Northern Pikes when they were new. That whole 3 years that I was at the Crazy Horse was the best. And then then lots of touring with Tour Tech after that, and all over Canada. Roger Whittaker, and Rita, Spirit of the West, and it's just like either mixing monitors or tech, and 2-3 years of doing sound at the Festival by the Sea in St. John, which is where I was when I was negotiating with CTV about coming in there. So that kind of ties it all.
Well, and people have no idea what a wicked place the Horse was. Like, I mean, when we tell them about it, I mean, it was just, it was our version of, the LA Strip. We keep saying that. I mean, some of the stuff that came through there was just phenomenal, and a great room just to hear bands and just the way it was set up.
Yeah, we sometimes we had to supplement with the supplement the Fane system with somebody wanted Kim Mitchell brought in his own rig, and we used the Fane for the DJ, and Kim had his own rig, and Meatloaf. Oh, Joan Jett. Yeah,
and,
man, it was.
He was the nicest professional person I ever met, and I've heard a lot of people say the same thing. He was. Yeah. I just remember he was phenomenal. That was amazing.
Just a quick story. CTV. We're over in PEI doing a Live at 5 6 News thing over there, and I was checking into the Delta Hotel, and this was around I think it was like 2011 when Meatloaf played at had played down at the beach. I forget the name of it. Anyway, Meatloaf played down there, and Meat was coming across the lobby, and I went over and said, "Hey, Meatloaf, hi, we met a long time ago. I'm Brian Orman. I was house tech at the Crazy Horse back when you guys played there a couple of times." And he said, "The Crazy Horse." Jeez, of course I remember you. That was just the best gig ever.
Wow.
Seriously, man, it was just the best. I love the crowd, love the energy, and okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
We're going to wrap it up, Brian. I just want to tell you, thank you from the bottom of our heart. Thanks for all the help and support you gave to us as aspiring young musicians back in the 80s and for folks around me. You've always been a gentleman and a great friend to maritime music, and we appreciate you being on the show today.
You're too kind. It was always a pleasure watching, having Meatloaf come through the door was just as much fun as having Shameless come through the door. It's all, everybody's trying to do the same thing, and it's always fun, and it's a pleasure working with both of you guys. It's been
thanks a lot, Brian. And I'm when all this is over, I got to come and see some of those paintings.
Yeah,
up close.
Yeah,
I want one. I already told you.
Yeah.
Of course, we have no budget, but anyhow. All right, guys. Thanks so much, Brian. Give Sandy a big hug from me, eh? Give Sandy a big hug for me.
Will do.
All right. Thanks again for being on the show.
Barstools, Bandtalk, the complete music bucket list.